Insidious The Red Door is the 5th entry in the franchise, and it's the directorial debut of star Patrick Wilson. It also brings back the characters from the original film, but does their return result in a return to form? Let's turn out the lights and find out. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I'm going to count down from 10, and then you will be in the further with us on this episode. I'm Peter, by the way, and I'm joined as always by Tim.
Peter, I know you're proud of this podcast, but just take it and just tear it in half. Just throw it away.
Whereas you've torn it up before you're even asked to. Yes. Yes. Today we are here to talk about another release from this year, one that we didn't have a chance to go see earlier on, and that was Insidious The Red Door, aka Insidious Chapter 5, because they're
Not
cowards.
to be confused with Red Dwarf.
Yeah. Well, the last movie was called what? The Last Key, I want to say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we had a key, then we've got a door.
Door.
I'm sure next time it'll all come together with something else.
A slightly open window.
The blue window, that'll be the next one. Yeah. Yes. But yes, welcome. Obviously this is the 5th movie in the franchise. We will start spoiler free for this one, but obviously we might have some spoilers for the earlier movies if we need to, so just bear that in mind. But we're starting spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we go to spoilers.
The crap out of 3.
I don't feel like you need to spoil the crap out of 3. I feel like it's only 1 and 2 that you may have to spoil a little bit. 3 was pretty standalone, so I don't think you really need to.
I'm also gonna just
What was that sentence? You seem to just sort of stop mid-sentence there, Tim. What was that?
Well, it's just funny because I said about like 4 or 5 words at once. It just sounded like. But I was gonna say I'm also gonna spoil Annabelle Comes Home.
Oh, I don't care about that. Knock yourself out. Don't care.
She came home the night she came home.
So yes, we
like horror movies.
Yes, we do. We also like Insidious. I loved the first Insidious. I enjoyed the second. I think 3's a surprisingly good standalone sequel that
Agreed.
I'd have been down for more of. The only one that I don't like, at least, well, the jury's out on this one, I'll tell you in a minute, but up until now, the only one that I didn't like was Last Key, because it just kind of felt like it didn't know what it wanted to be, and the pacing was all wrong, and it just kind of it wrapped up without feeling like it really had a story that built up anywhere. So, I don't think that we're too far off. I think we're on a similar page on The Last Key, but it is one of those ones where it's like I only watched it once, and then so it is one that I'm every now and again I'm like, especially when a new one comes out, I'm like, maybe I should revisit it, see if and I feel a little different. I'm sure probably not too different, but yeah, I don't know. Which, was a chance.
I will say I did go ahead and I did rewatch. Obviously it's October, so I'm rewatching a bunch of horror movies anyway. So when I knew that I was going to be watching this, I said, you know what, I'll throw on the first and the second one. I'll give those a little rewatch.
Oh, that's good, because I have not seen them in quite some time. We actually reviewed them way back. It was episode 2 was Insidious all the way back at the start of the show. So it's a horrible review. There's other people there. The whole vibe is weird. We hadn't really found a groove yet. It's like really short as well. Like we don't go anywhere nearly as in depth as we do now. So what?
Well, I mean I'm not, everything you said I agree with except for the length. I mean, maybe those maybe there's something to those short reviews. Maybe I should bring those back.
I think there'd be a riot, Tim, if people showed up and got a 25-minute Screams After Midnight. I think they'd be very upset by that.
I mean, hey, what do you want? You want us to, take 4 years to cover a new movie, or do you want us to get like every horror movie done in like 6 months?
But so that was way back. Honestly, at some point we should go back and redo the first 3, because those were so early on that they deserve to be redone with our experience and our
remastered 4K edition.
Yes, precisely. We've done it with a few others, and I've got a short list of about maybe 7 or 8 movies from that first 40, 50 episodes that I think we should go back and redo. We've done a few already, and at some point we will go back and do a few more. But
the boy.
That wasn't in the first 50. No, that doesn't need to be redone. Once was enough.
We just need to see if maybe someone's opinion has changed.
Anyone in particular?
Maybe the one person that was wrong about it.
Oh, you? You mean you? You're talking about you. It's you, Tim, right? Yeah?
Look in thy mirror and be true to thine own self.
What about the boys making you talk like you're in a Shakespeare play, Tim? What's happening here?
It's just it's that level of movie that it embarks the bard.
It's a Shakespeare level of movie. That is a direct quote from Tim on the boy. Well, yes. So no, Insidious is a franchise that, despite the fourth one being quite dodgy, I quite like and was intrigued when they announced the fifth one. It's kind of neat to have a horror franchise getting up to the bigger numbers, because, you know, it's something that happened a lot in the 80s. We have a lot of nostalgia for those franchises. And other than Saw, it feels like a lot of the modern ones don't quite do that. So it was neat to see this exist. And also they announced it was going to be the directorial debut of Patrick Wilson, the star of the first 2 movies, who notably was not in 3 or 4 along with the rest of the family that were the focus of 1 and 2. Because they kind of shifted off and did, like, you know, standalone stories that were actually set before the first 2 movies. So this was kind of like, oh, we're doing a continuation. And then I felt very old when I realized that the main character of this was going to be the kid from the first one, but now he's like 19. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's been over a decade since Insidious. Oh, just buy me a coffin already, because I'm fully ready to go.
Now, you know what's funny is, you know, talking about franchises, do you know what other horror franchise got a 5th entry this year?
Hold on. Wait, actually, I do know. Are you referring to Subspecies, Tim?
Actually, I wasn't, but that's a good.
It's a correct answer. I mean,
yeah, no, that's
you can't deny that.
Very good, very good. Yeah, but we also had Evil Dead Rise was this year, right? I'm not. Oh
yeah, you're right. Yeah. It was March. Feels like an eternity ago now, but yeah, it was March.
It does feel very weirdly long ago. But hey, I guess this is the year of the 5, as they say.
Yeah.
You don't feel like wowed by that revelation. It's 2023, but it's the year of the 5.
I mean, like, Friday the 13th Part 5 is one of the weaker ones in the franchise, Tim. Halloween 5 sucks. Nightmare on Elm Street 5 is pretty iffy. So
hey.
It's not like the 5s and these other franchises are got a good track record, okay?
Yeah, maybe the Bible got it wrong. Maybe 555. That's the number of the beast.
No, Halloween 6 is worse than 5. So no, 6 was on the money.
Really?
What do you mean, really? Curse of Michael Myers, Tim? Are you forgetting that movie?
I think that's a more fun watch than 5. I would say if I had to rewatch one, I would probably do that over 5.
You've just got rose-tinted Paul Rudd glasses on. That's all I'm seeing right now.
So dreamy.
Freddy's Dead is like abysmal. It's like the worst one in the whole franchise.
Oh well, yeah, no argument there, unless you count the remake, obviously.
Yeah. Friday the 13th, sure. 6 is one of the better ones, but I mean that's you know, okay, that's the outlier. But there's other bad 6s. Damn it. Did I bring up Hellraiser 6? You don't even know which one Hellraiser 6 was, because they've all merged together in your mind, but you know it was bad.
Yeah, that had to have been a bad one.
So,
Howling 6 probably sucked. I don't remember which one that was either.
Oh, do you not? Okay, that was the one with the cult and all that stuff. And
okay.
Yeah, and Paul Rudd, as I previously mentioned.
What? No, I'm talking about the Howling, not Halloween.
Oh, Howling. Oh, Howling was Howling 6 was the circus one.
Okay.
The Freaks. which
they come out at night, I hear.
I mean, it was bad, but the next one was the line dancing one, which
Bring back the freaks.
no one ever wants to refer to the entry in a horror franchise as the line dancing one. There is no context in which that is good. Oh dear. Anyway, Insidious, The Red Door, is about Dalton, who was the kid who was in the coma / trapped in the further in the first movie. He is now going off to college. He's got a strained relationship with his dad, who is now separated from Rose Byrne, the wife. And he and his dad, and I had forgotten this. I'm glad the movie did the little previously on Insidious bit at the start. I'd forgotten that they intentionally got their memories wiped at the end of Insidious 2, and that was how they were going to like avoid like any of the demons or anything like coming back through and using them as conduits, because they're natural conduits for all the spooky shit, because they all connect to the further. So this movie's very much about kind of those memories starting to come back, or like something opens the red door, shall we say, and then they must try and
red door.
close the red door. So that is the gist of it. But it's kind of an interesting setup, because it's not a family in a house where spooky shit starts happening. You've got Dalton off at his campus, he's in dorm rooms, and then you've got stuff with the dad on his own, sort of trying to figure out why his mind's so messed up, and that's kind of the two like plot threads we follow throughout the movie. So that is the basic gist of Insidious Chapter 5, The Red Door, to give it its full title. So, Tim, I guess I'll ask the question. Bum bum. Bum bum. Bum bum. What did you think of Insidious The Red Door, Timmy?
Yeah, I was pretty excited going into this. Insidious isn't one of those franchises that I think about like a ton, but like you said, it has a pretty good track record. The first one like was really good, and especially at the time it felt like pretty fresh and different. I wasn't as crazy as the second one, but it was still pretty fun. And then I actually really liked the third. And then like we said, the fourth one, not the best. But I mean, hey, it like you kind of said before, though, it's fun to get these long running franchises that it just doesn't seem like we get as much anymore. And I was kind of intrigued by the idea of, this is kind of being like a somewhat sequel to the first two. I like that it's not like we have to like reboot the franchise and like those other movies don't matter. It's like, no, they still matter. It's just that this is in particular is kind of going back to these characters, and and I don't know, but weirdly I feel like it's not a movie not a lot of people talked about, so I didn't really know going in if like where people saying that it was like, it sucked, or it's boring, or or it's great. It was like a really surprise return to form. After watching it, I guess my stance on it is that it's fine. There was some stuff that I liked about it. I think there's definitely some cool bits here and there, and I was actually surprised at kind of how invested I was in the story. Between the son and the dad. It like if you had told like when I kind of heard that that's what the movie was about. Like it's maybe not doesn't sound like the most interesting thing, but I don't know. I was I was into it, and I don't like this thing in like movies where it's like, you have one movie and it's like, like there's like a happy ending or whatever, and then years later they pick up and it's like, no, actually everything is bad, and like the characters aren't talking to each other anymore and they're not friends and blah blah blah. But I do think it's interesting here that there is like a specific story reason for that, so I think it actually makes it kind of interesting that that's something that they have to get through and conquer. But I just think like there's a couple, like one thing that's really fun about the franchise is it is kind of just like a crazy bag of like different stuff. Like it's not just like like one particular like ghost or something that's haunting them. Like it's cool like when you watch like the first couple of movies, because there's like so much different stuff that's going on, and then once you actually add the further into it, there's so much like wacky fun. Like it's like a lot of setup for just like what can be really fun, like jump scares and weird stuff happening, which and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, I think, jump scares can be kind of good and fun, when they're done properly and set up. And I think this one actually does have a couple of set pieces where that like a jump scare is coming, but I think they do it in a fun way or and stuff. But I feel like there wasn't as much like kind of crazy stuff as I wanted out of this. And then I kind of felt the ending like got a little rushed. Like, that comes to a point where the characters start figuring out what's happening and what they need to do to kind of like overcome it. And I kind of thought like, oh, this is where we're gonna start getting some really cool like spooky stuff when they're gonna start doing some more exploring or whatever. And then it kind of just ended like and I think kind of a dull way. But that being said, though, like, I'm not super negative about it. I still had fun watching it. Like, it's a perfectly fine movie. It's just, unfortunately, it wasn't like a big, oh my god, wow, like they did it, it's back, baby. But no, I mean, it's a good enough entry. Like you said, it's a fifth entry, so probably, when you compare it to a lot of other fifth entries, it's probably like leaps and bounds, ahead of them. But yeah, it's just fine, which is kind of the. I was actually kind of trying to think of like what the theme for like horror this year is, and it's like, like we've had like a couple of years where it's like, oh wow, like this is a great year for indie horror, or like, oh man, this is like a great year for returning to franchises, or like, oh, this is like a great year for like we're getting like cool new like studio horror or whatever, which usually is not the case, but every now and again you get some good ones. But I feel like this year has just been like a lot of horror movies that are like just fine, like a lot of 6s out of 10s floating around this year, which I guess isn't a bad thing. It's better than having a lot of crap. But I feel like it's not like a strong year, but it's also not like a super like bad year either. It's kind of weird. But anyway, that's my story.
All I asked is what you thought of Insidious 5, and somehow I got a monologue that lasted way beyond that. Yeah, I went in with low expectations because I think the reviews at the time during the summer when it came out were pretty bad to mediocre. So I kind of went in with very kind of just, okay, hoping for the best. Hopefully I disagree with them, and that's what I'll maybe get out of it. And as I was watching it, I kind of found myself agreeing with a couple of things you said there, is that as it was going, I was like, I'm kind of invested in the story in a way that I don't think I expected to be, and I don't, and I think it is probably because I like the first movie so much, and I think everything that this movie does is at least built out of the mythology that was set up in that first movie, so it doesn't feel like we're just doing like weird cheats to kind of like have a movie happen. It feels like there's kind of a message and a meaning behind why like the things are happening again, and I think that's a decent thing. I enjoyed the characters, particularly I thought the roommate character Chris, she and Dalton I thought had good chemistry, and I thought she was a good kind of friend character to have around. So I'll be honest, she kind of annoyed me. Well, I just need to dial it down just a little bit, like. Well, regardless, I thought she was pretty likable. I thought the whole thing with the setup and him looking into like these like repressed memories, and as he was seeing more stuff, the more creepy stuff was happening and things were going on. Like, I thought that was mostly pretty good, even to a point, but I kind of also agree that it never excels to like great or anything like that, or even just outright good. Like, I think by the time I got to the end, I was kind of feeling like, you know what? For movie number 5, I think that was a solid enough entry if you happen to care about the franchise. I don't think it's going to make any new fans. I don't think it's going to leave a super lasting impression in a lot of ways. But I think if I'm rewatching the franchise, I'm quite happy to have that on as the kind of the I might skip 4, but I'm happy to have that on. There is a couple things that I definitely don't like as much. I do actually agree the ending feels a bit rushed. After a lot of decent setup, it feels like it kind of... And the premise of what's happening at the ending is actually really good, but it just kind of quickly happens without much fanfare, bizarrely. And there's also one like really weird, just ultra saccharine moment right at the very, very end that I think is a bridge too far. But by and large, I think it's a pretty decent fifth movie. Like, and maybe this is coming from a place where, like, I'm just happy that it feels like it's doing something a little different. It's like built out of what the first movie set up, but it's also, like I say, it's not a family in a house with a kid who's freaking out. It's a different setup with different characters in different places. Everything's tying into the mythology of these characters can go into the further, and that, you know, opens this door to all sorts of nasty things, and some of them are specifically have been gunning for these characters for years, and that's something that comes up. Like, I think, honestly, all of that stuff I was kind of into, and I was like, you know what, much like the second one, because the second movie's not a great movie either. It's kind of like just ultra convoluted, we're going to do tons with the mythology. But because I like the mythology of the first one so much, I was kind of into it, even though it was definitely not as slick or as tight a movie by any means. And I think this, like you said, there's actually a few fun set pieces where it does some creepy moments that have good jump scares. Maybe I could have liked a little bit more of them, but what was there I thought was pretty solid. So I think overall I'm kind of positive on it. Like, not like gushing praise by any means, not like you have to see this, it's great. But I think if you like, I think the perfect way to put it is that if you like Insidious 2, I think you'll still get something out of Insidious 5.
Yeah.
That would be maybe how I'd phrase it.
Well said, little brother.
Yeah, all right, Tim. No need to be condescending.
I don't know. I think it's so dumb in movies or TV shows when anyone talks to someone like that. Like, all right, obviously the movie is just reminding you that he's talking to his younger brother, but no one ever actually talks to someone on the phone like, hey, big brother, hey, little brother.
I don't know. People might say, hey, bro, hey, sis. No? Is that not...
That's fine, but like, if he was like, hey, bro, whatever. But I think he like literally says like, hey, little brother.
That's fair. The smarter way of doing it is to have them talk about someone else that makes it obvious. Like, say if they say, hey, have you talked to mum yet? That's like, that sounds natural, and it makes it clear the siblings.
Much better, yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I was pretty impressed with I forget the actor's name, but the
Patrick
the guy
Wilson.
Not him, the guy that plays Dalton.
Ty Simpkins.
There you go. Because I don't know if he's done much between the movies, but it's sometimes it's a little bit of a risk, like for when a kid actor grows up, if he's gonna actually be good or not. But I thought he was a pretty good actor in this.
I actually don't think I realized it was the same. I just assumed they cast someone new because he was older. But yeah, it's actually the same actor as the first movie. So hey, fair play. That's impressive. He was the kid in Iron Man 3 as well, apparently.
Oh,
or he was in. At least he was in it. I don't know if he was the kid. Maybe I'm just assuming he was that kid, because I can think of one kid that was in Iron Man 3.
Yeah, there's pretty much one kid there.
Hold on, I'm clicking on Iron Man 3 to see how far up the list he is. Where is he? Harley Keener, was that kid? I think that was the kid. I mean,
Lord knows I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone else above him that would be the kid.
That's gotta be right, yeah.
Yeah. So he'd been in some other movies at least in the meantime. He was in The Whale that came out last year. I've not seen that yet, but
I saw it, and that was quite the movie. See that?
He was one of the kids in Jurassic World.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it's amazing that I've not realized that this kid is the same person in all these movies, but fair enough.
Because he gets around more than I thought.
Yeah, I guess it's just because he's going through puberty, so every time I see him, he looks a bit different.
Yeah.
Now he's got long hair, and he's like, an adult. Like, it's weird.
So angsty.
He's a bit angsty, but he's got like this weird repressed memory thing of this like, demonic kidnapping that happened to him. So I mean, I can't really hold it against him.
I'll give him a pass.
Yeah, so it is what it is. But yeah, and I thought maybe if I have another critique is that I would say maybe the first like half hour or so is a little slow at times. Like it feels like it's spending a lot of time on the setup, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But it does kind of go a little while without anything really creepy happening. When the creepy stuff does happen, though, it does. I'd say it's mostly pretty satisfying for what it is.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess maybe the only argument or thing you could say is that it feels like Wilson, as a director, is channeling sort of like things that the first Insidious did, as opposed to coming up with crazy new things like James Wan might have done. And I think that's maybe a fair critique you could maybe levy at it, but I still think it's doing the things that it is doing relatively solid. So yeah, I'm kind of pleasantly surprised in a weird way, because I kind of thought it was going to be shit, and instead I'm like, no, it's okay. It's actually not bad. Like I was happy enough watching it, and I don't regret watching it, which is more than I can say for your Pet Sematary Bloodlines.
Agreed. Yeah.
So yes, Insidious 5 better than Pet Sematary 4.
Oof.
Or more importantly, it's definitely better than Insidious 4, right? I mean, we're in agreement on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I barely remember that much from the movie, but I definitely know my feelings were higher in this one than that one.
Go back and check out our review, Tim, if you really need a refresher. You can hear what you said, word for word.
That is true. I can do that.
It's on the record, damn it. Anywho. So I guess we'll give the spoiler warning so we can just talk about the movie freely, talk about the different things that it does, and get into it. So, yeah. Spoilers, then, for Insidious The Red Door. You have been warned.
The spoiler door is open.
Yes, we're beyond the spoiler door. Yeah. There's a couple things that it kind of sets up that I wish it did a bit more with. Like, Dalton, once he starts realizing that he can go into the further, he kind of does it intentionally to try and talk to this ghost that's in a frat house. And I felt like they were setting stuff up here where this was going to be something he does a bit more and more, or he like does more with it. And it ends up just being kind of a scare to show that it's dangerous to do this, which is fine, but I thought, oh, maybe there's going to be more to this. So there was a couple things like that where it felt like, oh, this feels like it's going to be a big deal, like going forward in the movie, and it kind of wasn't in the way that I thought it might be.
It also feels weird because that, those frat scenes, it seems like they're setting up, Nick the Dick to be more of a character in the movie, but yeah, he's gone really, after that like second scene.
It kind of feels like there's maybe some deleted scenes that came after that probably got cut out for whatever reason.
Yeah, because like obviously he's set up as being an asshole, but then like he does save Chris's character in that like second kind of instance, or I guess. I mean, I don't know, maybe if it's like, well, actually it was Dalton saving her or whatever in the further, but, he's trying to help. So it kind of has that feel of like, oh, this character you thought was a dick might not be so bad that like maybe he's going to join their crew or something.
Hold on a second. This character you thought was a dick might not be so... Like, there's a line that he's got, and that line is not letting someone die. I'll give him that. But that doesn't change the fact that he is... Well, Nick the Dick, and he's named that for a reason. Yeah. Okay? Like, they introduce this character who gives the speech at the frat house, who then we see he wears moisturizer or something. Like, he's got like cream on for like a whole scene. And starts talking about it. But he's really mean to Chris when he catches Chris and Dalton in his room. And they, Chris quickly starts kissing Dalton to pretend that there were a couple in there. Which, that's also something I thought they were going to, like, develop. Like, I thought Dalton was going to be like, hey, I kind of like that kiss. And then maybe by the end imply, oh, they're going to maybe date or something, be a couple. But they didn't do that. But, Dalton's like, oh, maybe if we get drunk enough, we might find you attractive. So stick around. And to which Chris...
Well, Dalton doesn't say that.
Oh, sorry, Dalton doesn't say that. No. Nick the Dick says that,
that would
sorry.
Be crazy if he said
Nick the Dick says that, sorry. I'm conflating the names. To which Chris, and this is probably, if you didn't like her already, this is the moment we go, she's more of a kick the dick kind of person. And then, would you believe it, she does in fact kick him in the dick. And they bolt it. So, That's
See, those were instances where I like the character, like I didn't completely hate the character. There were just times where I was like, all right, it seems like they're trying too hard to make her like quirky or whatever, and like there's weird stuff where she's like let's go like look through their rooms and stuff, and I'm like, that's like, I don't know, that's not like a cool thing to do, even if they are like annoying frat guys. Like, I don't know, I feel like you shouldn't be going through like people's property and stuff and like making fun of them, but
sounds such an old man right now, to be honest, Tim. Sounds like such an old man.
All right.
Yeah, no, I think it, like, her quirkiness kind of counteracted the fact that Dalton was just kind of this quiet, mopey guy who was hesitant to like really interact with anyone. So
that's fair.
It was kind of a balancing act more than anything, because the whole thing, of course, is that his dad drives him out there, which is something that he kind of wrestled over even wanting to do at the start of the movie, because he feels awkward with his son, and he does drive him out there, but they have this big fight just before they leave, where the dad tries to encourage him to go to this frat party, and Dalton's like, you don't know me. if you're suggesting I go to a frat party, like, no, like, that's not me. And they end up having a fight, and Dalton says, you know, I can see why mum left you, and he calls him a little shit, and it's this whole big thing where they kind of blow up each other. And this is also around here where we meet Chris, who turns out to be his roommate, which is a mistake, because apparently the admissions, or whoever's running the dorms, assumed Chris was a guy because the name Chris, and clearly, you know, they're not supposed to put the boys and the girls together in the dorm rooms.
Yeah.
But so she gets a different room the next night, but they spend the first night in the same room, and then she ends up hanging out anyway because they kind of become friends. And I thought it was kind of sweet that when Dalton's getting kind of really scared, because he actually has like an actual supernatural scare like the next night, and Chris actually chooses to stay in the room with him to make him feel comfortable and better. You know, I thought that was sweet. It was a bit of character bonding.
Yeah,
bit of that.
That's nice.
Okay.
Yeah, don't mind that.
All right. Well, we'll talk about what triggers everything then. At least with Dalton, anyway. We'll talk about Josh, the dad, separately. Dalton goes to his art class, and he's got this fancy art teacher who's like, "Okay, everyone, take out one of your work from your portfolio and put it on your easel, and you know, I'll walk around and judge them." And she goes over to like one guy who's put out his drawing of like someone holding a sword or whatever it is, and she's like, "This looks like a photograph. I can see your technique." And he's like, "Thank you. That was not a compliment. Tear it up. It disgusts me." So she's a little bit over the top, and it's all, you know, this kid refuses, but then Dalton like rips up his portrait that he did of his grandmother, because the movie starts with the grandmother's funeral, by the way, just FYI. She was a character in the first two movies, but he rips up this drawing of her, and the teacher likes that. She liked it a lot. He's the teacher's pet instantly for it. And I think this actually is a subtle little thing in the storytelling, because the whole idea of the movie is that all these repressed memories, this is showing that he's willing to give up a memory in this moment. And then the lesson of the movie is that even the bad memories you have to keep. You can't just lock them away. You have to be able to live with them and process them. That's the overall message of the movie. I know you don't want me talking about trauma, Tim. You're sick of movies, horror movies being also about trauma, but I think this kind of was as well.
I think it kind of warrants it in this, because it's, you know, it's playing off the themes from like the other movies and stuff. So it's I was fine with it in this instance.
And a big part of it as well is the idea that like mental illness is passed down through you know, family members, and the grandfather, we find out, like, at least he was diagnosed as schizophrenic. In actuality, he was probably just doing further stuff in astral projection, and no one could explain all the weird stuff that was happening to him. But that passed down to Josh, which is now passed down to Dalton, and you know, so they've all got this ability, right? That's the thing.
I do just want to mention real quick before, you know, we're too far from the scene, but the, you know, that kid that refuses to, you know, tear up his picture, you know, he's gonna become an AI bro, like. he was like so proud of his like photorealistic thing that I'm sure he's gonna pivot to AI stuff.
This is going to sound bad and so judgmental, but all I could focus on in his scene when he was talking was this little earring stud that he had in his ear. And I thought, I'm kind of enjoying you getting chewed out right now, buddy, because you're offending me with this little sad, pathetic gem in your earlobe.
Yeah, well, some people can't hack it in what's her face class.
I don't remember her name. This is some fancy ass teacher. Here you go. Almagan. Professor Almagan was her name.
There you go. Sounds like a Harry Potter character.
Or Armagan. Sorry, Armagan. Did I say Almagan? Armagan. It was an R, not an L.
So I did like the teacher though. Like she is like very like she was over the top, but like I don't know. I thought that made it fun. And
although I did get a chuckle though. The reason why all this starts for Dalton is because this teacher, this professor, does a countdown from 10 and says, "Look inside yourself," and she starts counting down. And I'm like, oh, this just happens to be a lot like the hypnosis that sent him to the further when he was a kid. Oh no! Oh dear!
Yeah, that's literally what I was just about to say. Like, yeah, it's very funny that that's how this all starts.
Yeah. At least they have her do it again in a later scene to imply that this is something she does. Like, this is like one of her quirks that she always does. It's not just this once for the sake of like triggering his repressed memory. Because you see it in the trailer, but he like sort of scribbles out the red door. Like, that's what he draws with the what was it? What's he using? It's the
art tool, whatever. Like,
it's
charcoal.
Yeah, it was charcoal. So yeah, it's not paint. It wasn't. Yeah, I was trying to remember what the implement was. The drawing tool. Anyway, yes. No thoughts. Okay, all right. We're fine. No thoughts on the drawing or.
I just kind of lost track of where we were going because I feel like we were trying so hard to remember the actual tool.
Don't make me relive this humiliation, Tim. It just happened 30 seconds ago. You make me relive it already.
All right, repress it. Jeez.
You sick bastard. By the way, was this PG-13? I think I noticed that when I was checking earlier.
Probably. I mean, there wasn't. I don't feel like there was anything like that. Like, there definitely wasn't any nudity or anything in it.
Yeah, PG-13. No, I mean, it's just interesting because I never felt it like lacked any tension because of that, which I guess just shows because of the type of horror it is. It doesn't need, because it's not like a violent horror. Like Insidious was never like a super violent thing.
I don't think the other ones are.
No, I think the first one was.
Was it?
I think the first couple
they
were.
did have that demon with that giant cock. Forgot about that.
I think you're thinking of the porn parody you watched, Tim.
Oh yeah. Inside of Us. I don't know.
Inside of Us, the last dildo.
There you go.
Oh dear. So yeah, that's what kickstarts his thing though, and it's when he's working on this painting a bit more in his dorm room where he kind of like falls asleep and goes into the further, and he goes snooping around the dorms, and he goes into the room that Chris has now moved into, and like picks up her instrument, which reminds me, she had like a really weird innuendo line earlier on where she says, "Do you want to blow on my?" What was it? It was Hooter, yeah. And he's like, "Excuse me?" And she's like, my air piano thing. I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that, yeah." You know what? Blow on my piano.
One thing that was like a nice little callback on that scene that I probably wouldn't have caught if I hadn't just rewatched the other two movies, but he plays like a little song, and then she's like, "Oh, like what song was that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's a song my mom wrote." So that was actually like the song that in the second movie, Rose Byrne's character like plays that song at the piano, and Josh, when he's like possessed, she's like, "Oh, don't you recognize that song?" And he's like, "No, I don't know what it is." And she's like, "Oh, okay. I wrote that song for you." Like, you don't remember it? And that's when she kind of starts realizing like, "Oh, this is not my husband."
And then he's like, "Tear it up, the shit."
Yeah, tear that piano in half.
Yeah. And Chris is kind of aware enough, like, because she wakes up and hears the thing drop, and she runs down and says, "Hey, you're a creep, were you in my room?" And then he obviously tries to explain like the whole astral thing without saying those words because he doesn't know it yet. Because there's a scene. This is how they get the paranormal investigators out of the movie. Oh, you sound annoyed. Were you annoyed by this?
No, well, it just is way too forced for me. The problem is that I love these characters, so I do want them in the movie, but I want them, like, once they figure out what's going on, I want them to call them and have them help out or something. Like, this was just, it's just one of those things that was, like, too big a coincidence for me to, like, take seriously, because, like, oh, like, you did a YouTube search, and, like, the first person you find just happens to be, like, these researchers that are involved in this kid's life.
Okay, to be fair, she comes in once she's found it. We have no idea how much searching she did to get to it.
Okay.
Right, we don't know that.
She watched 10 other videos and then just landed on this one and decided that was the one to show him for no random reason.
I take your point, okay, but I kind of liked it because it was like, hey, we can show them and keep them a part of the DNA of the franchise without having to actually force them into the plot itself. Because, well, I wouldn't have minded if they'd called them. I thought it was kind of a neat way to see them and then see Lin Shaye. Obviously, they kind of ruin it by doing the other Lin Shaye thing at the end, which I thought was a bit forced.
I agree, yeah.
But, like, in this scene, like, them finding, like, her giving, like... And I do actually like this in the suggested videos, because they're talking in the thing, and then they bring her up. And then in the suggested videos, there was, like, this lecture she did where she's talking about the further. And I was like, okay, this is a neat thing, because this is like the Randy from Scream 3 videotape, but instead of something she specifically recorded for the future, this is just, no. We live in the world with YouTube, and some of our things are on YouTube, so they just, find them. I was like, okay, I think that's fine. I think that makes sense. And to be fair, would you call these guys, because they do look like a pair of tits in this video. you can't take them seriously. And that was always their gimmick, is that they kind of feel like they don't really belong, but...
No, yeah, I agree. I think it's just, and to be clear, like, I would rather have this scene in the movie than just not have them in the movie at all. So it's like, if this is what we get, that's fine. But it just felt a little forced to me, and I did kind of miss them having, again, like, I don't want them to be the stars of the movie, which actually that's probably...
That's kind of why 4 didn't work very well.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it just feels, it's hard for me to kind of take it seriously, because it just feels like so forced and like too much of a coincidence. But maybe that's too nitpicky. Again, I do agree though. I was happy to see them. Like, I would rather have them than not be in the movie at all.
It's a fine line, because I could see myself feeling the same way, but for whatever reason, I just smiled when I saw them and went, okay, if this is their inclusion, then this is a cute little way of just having them be there a little, and then moving on.
I guess maybe something that can justify it is, I mean, if like they clearly got so much like experience and stuff from the last couple of movies, and they've probably been around so much ghost stuff that they probably could have started a very popular channel or podcast or even like TV show or something. So maybe they are super popular.
People love the true crime and the paranormal like podcasts.
Yeah.
Like they could totally be doing that shit.
So it is possible then, if they are like big names in the paranormal world, that maybe that's one of the first things that pops up when you search. But why am I doing the heavy lifting for explaining this?
They can end the start of every episode, like the intro always ends with, let's look a little further. And then
the second clip that you're talking about with Elise, I did think that was funny, because like she starts off like so like it starts off very like kind of jovial, and she's like kind of smiling, she's like, and then it gets like really intense.
It's like, welcome class, I'm happy to be speaking here, go into the further and you will see some messed up shit. And the further you go, the worse and more danger you're in, and yada yada.
It's like, it's populated with the dead that want nothing but pain for the living. It's like, oh Jesus, like this is like the first minute of the lecture, like where are we gonna go from here? And also we didn't mention too the other cameo from was it like Clyde or something, like that old guy from the second movie was at the mother's funeral.
Yeah, he's the one who erased their memory, and Josh has a moment where he kind of sees him and like thinks, you look familiar, and he just kind of is friendly but tries to get away as quickly as possible, because he doesn't want to trigger all the memories, because he knows why they shouldn't remember.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I guess we'll probably get more into it like towards the end, but there's like a weird thing with this movie where it's like, I don't know, like it feels like so many people, like, or maybe you could have solved a lot of stuff with like maybe like, you know, giving them their memories back or whatever. Like, did you really have to like just let your marriage go to shit and get a divorce instead of just being like, maybe at some point you should have been like, you know what, like, let's just, you know, undo this. And I know it sucks, but maybe like you have to live with that instead of I mean, I guess that's like the point of the movie, but it's just weird that like other characters like didn't intervene sooner or something.
Well, 2 points on that. One, she let the marriage go to shit is because she believed that if the memories came back, that the demons would come after them again, and she almost lost both her son and her husband. So I can kind of see the confliction from her. Secondly, as for why other characters don't give them their memories back in this movie, it's because none of them know until nearly until Josh goes to the wife and starts talking about all the things that he's been seeing and experiencing. That's when she's like, oh shit, okay, Josh, I need to tell you a few things, right? Like, she tells him pretty quickly once he actually says he's been seeing things and shit. She, like, up until that point though, no one knows what him or Dalton are really going through.
Well, I mean, I think not specifically talking about demons, but like, you know, he keeps talking about having this like fogginess that's like affecting like his brain and his memories and stuff, which I mean maybe he's keeping that to himself, but it seemed like more to me that it was something that, like, you know, that he was open to talking about. I mean, at the very least, like, Josh knew about it because he kept telling him like, the fogginess, and he was going to doctors and
the
stuff.
wife knew as well. No, that was definitely not something that was like, he definitely was bringing it up, and it was kind of this sort of blanket excuse that for why he's been acting weird for the last few years. I get what you're saying, but I think the idea is that the risk of like in a weird way is to protect himself, because he might get killed if he remembers. And
fair.
Part of the movie is that when they do finally remember, it's that no, they have the strength to live with this, and that's kind of the point. But I mean, I don't know. Well, anyway, so the whole thing with
and also, sorry, not just not to belabor that, but then it also just, I don't know. The thing that kind of stinks about it is that I don't know, like I do feel like I want like Rose Byrne to have more to do in this movie. Like, she's just really barely a character at all. So that's another thing that, like, oh yeah, it might be nice if she was more involved in it, but yeah.
I mean, I guess I expected it though, because the way she was credited, she got the final credit. She was the and Rose Byrne at the end, so I just kind of she's kind of a borderline cameo then, versus this is the son's movie and Patrick Wilson's the supporting actor, and then everyone else is kind of minor by comparison.
Which, I mean, it makes sense because they're the ones that go through all that, travel in the further and stuff, and the movie's about them, but it just kind of stinks because she was a character that I liked, and it feels like even though she wasn't the one traveling and stuff, it feels like the first movie was centered a bit more around her.
I mean, for a lot of that first movie, she was the one noticing all the stuff happening for a good portion of that movie, so she definitely was kind of the central character for a good bit of it. But I'm just glad they got her back, because it's these sequels, like I mean, Tim, like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, because so many of these sequels is like they'll either recast because the actors don't want to come back, or they'll just say, oh, they died off camera between movies, and they'll just explain it that way. At least here, like, she is there, and the fact that they're in this position where they're separated ties into like the overall themes and plot of the movie. Like, like, other than just giving her own plot line where she gets to do a lot more stuff, this is almost the best case scenario in a weird way, because at least it's making it all work in the context of the film without having to just kind of shit can her, because Rose Byrne's too big for us now, she doesn't want to come back.
Well, she's got that Ninja Turtle money now.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. She's Leatherhead in the new Turtles movie, right? Yeah, voice acting doesn't pay as well as all this stuff, all the live action stuff. I mean, that said, maybe the Turtles movie did pay more than Insidious 5. That's actually possible. But I don't know. It's kind of borderline. I'm not sure. Could go either way. I suspect this was kind of a case of like, because Patrick Wilson was directing, it was like, oh, I'll do it as a favourite of him because maybe they were friends from the first couple of movies. I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she's just she's hard up. She's kicking that crystal meth habit. She needs a paycheck, and alleged crystal meth habit, of course.
Of course, yes.
I did just make that up, but just in case anyone thinks I'm actually referencing like a real thing. Like, as far as I know, no crystal meth.
We can't be sued. We cannot.
I think you'll find we can, which is why I'm making this very clear. Thank you very much. Anyway, so back to Dalton. Dalton he tries to see the dead kid because there's a whole big sequence. So actually, the first time he's at the further, I should just mention there's a creepy bit at the very end of it where like a little demon with a tail like tries to come in the room after him when he goes back to his body, but he just shuts the door quick enough. Neat little moment. Just thought I'd mention it. But then when they go to the frat house for the party, which they're making fun of, he ends up seeing this ghost, and it's like this reference just before he sees him where there was this incident with a kid who died, and Dalton sees him and gets freaked out, and there's a whole thing here where he's hiding under the bed and he's like sort of sneaking out. And I think one of the things this movie does well is the silent person in the background who's out of focus, who's either coming towards the camera. It happens right at the start with Patrick Wilson sitting in the car, and he's looking at his phone, and you just see this figure in the background. By the end of the movie, you understand that was his dad who's like trying to reach out to him, but obviously at the start you're just like, oh, that's creepy. But I love that like the movie knows when not to do the sting. Like it'll do the music sting eventually, but it'll let it go a while and just enjoy the creepy visual of the silence. And even one of the jump scares, which I think is under a bed again, where either Dalton or Chris look to the side and there's like a face there. I love that it takes a second before the music sting hits. It waits until that like demon or whatever it is looks over at them. The eyes move first, and then the sting hits.
Yeah,
I think that's just a nice little touch that made it a better scare to me. Like I thought, oh, that was fun.
For sure. Yeah,
I had a bit more personality.
No, I agree. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I mean, I guess not to jump around too much, but I really like the. So like you kind of set up early on that it looks like there's something that's following Patrick Wilson's character, and then
there's two big scenes, one of which I'm sure you're about to mention, but there's two big set pieces with him as he's looking into his own stuff. One's where he goes to get an MRI, and the other one is when he's trying to do this memory game on his window that the doctor told him to do to try and help sort of basically just like give his brain like a task and practice. It like helps with short-term memory.
Yeah, so, people complain about jump scares all the time, but I think what they're really complaining about is the very generic kind of shitty jump scares where all it is like literally like, something jumps out of the shadow at someone, or, someone opens a door or whatever, or it's just, whatever, very easy generic stuff that's not really that scary. What I like about these are, like, they actually take time to, like, set stuff up, so it actually feels like, oh, okay, I see what they're setting up, but let me see how they're gonna do it. So like I think the memory game is like a perfect example of that, where
very good. Yeah, I like this one a lot.
Like as soon as you see it, you know what's gonna happen. Like he's lifting up these cards, and then okay, eventually he's gonna start lifting stuff up, and you're gonna start to see something.
One key detail you've left out here is they're on the window. So
right. Yeah.
He's got these bits of cardboard with photos of his family members hidden on the other side of the cardboard. And he's lifting them up. Just like so there's like pairs of them. So he lifts up one and he sees Dalton, and then he lifts up another. He sees his mom. He sees his wife. Blah blah blah. And then he sees Dalton again. And the whole idea is that when he sees this, like a pair, he has to remember where the first one was of that pair, and he's struggling, right? So he fails, and then he he jumbles them up again. But as he's taking them down and putting them back up, you see this figure off in the distance across the street. And in hindsight, I now realise that was the same figure as the opening scene that was behind the car. But at the time, I didn't really notice that. I just kind of saw a figure. But you see him standing there as he's putting the bits of cardboard back up. And then you're expecting when he takes them down again, he's still going to be there, or he's going to be closer. But he's gone. And he puts the back up. And then he's like trying to remember where the one was. He's like, where was that? Where was the one of my mom? I'm trying to remember. And he goes to lift up the middle one. And you're thinking, the face is going to be there. and it's not. There's nothing there. But the whole time you're on edge because you're like, okay, now they've established this creepy figure was standing outside the window. I'm waiting for them to come through, and then the way it pays off is that at a moment where you don't really expect it, because he's kind of like up close and he's just starting to take them down again, instead of something appearing, like the thing just crashes through the window and it's super loud, and it actually has a good jump scare. It's like, oh, that actually played on my expectations and did it in a way that I didn't see coming.
Yeah, like the crappy version of that in like a bad generic movie would be like, you know, he lifts up a card and there's nothing, and then he lifts it up again, and this time there's like a big CGI eyeball like right up against the screen, and the music's like rah, like, you know, but no, like this I actually did like, I like the patience that it takes, because that just really amps up, like, you know, the tension, and you're waiting. You know, it's like a puzzle. Like, you know, you're trying to kind of get ahead of what the movie's gonna do, and then it actually does end up surprising you at the end. So it's it's a really good little bit.
Yeah, and the whole point of this scene is that the ghost chases him up to the room, his mum's room, because it seemed like he was living in his mum's house when he separated with his wife, and it leads him to the box of photos, which is like showing him who his dad was, and that's how he looks into him and finds out more about him. So it had a purpose that the ghost was leading them there, even though he was being very scary about it, or at the very least it was scary from his perspective. Like, arguably, maybe he wasn't actually doing anything scary. Although jumping through the window's pretty intense.
That's a bit much.
Yeah, a bit intense. But I guess you got to make him take notice. Like,
that's true.
You can't shake apathy out of someone without dramatic examples. Okay, to quote Batman. So, and then the other one's the MRI scene, which is first, because he goes to get an MRI to see if he's got anything physically wrong with his brain, and they do this whole thing where you're sort of looking up at his face inside the MRI machine. Sort of the cameras, it's almost as if the camera's sitting on his stomach and looking up at his face, and you just notice this blurry shape, like above him, like there's something behind him, like further up the machine. And then it starts to move, and it's like, oh, again, they're playing with the idea that this is something quiet, and we're waiting for it to do something. This one's not as good, because I don't think the payoff is quite amazing, but I did really like that first moment where you notice something.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think. Oh, sorry.
No, you're going to go. I was done, basically.
Oh no, like yeah, I think I like this one quite a bit. I agree. The other one had a bit more better like tension and payoff and stuff, but then. But again, it's just something that it's like a really nice setup for a scare that I don't think I've really seen before. I mean, I definitely have seen, like, you know, people in hospitals and horror movies, and, you know, that have had to get like MRIs or PET scans or whatever, like stuff with this kind of device. But I feel like I haven't seen like a scare like specifically done like this, and I've never had one myself, but you know, I heard from people that have that. Say it is actually a pretty like scary experience for a lot of people, because especially like if you have like claustrophobia at all, because you know, it's a very tight space, and like, you know, you're strapped down and you can't move like at all. Like it's you know, it takes a while to do. I think it's like 10 or 15 minutes, but like you really can't move, and like, you know, it's hard for people that, especially if you're scared and, you know, start shaking or something, and they have to start over. So again, it's just another like, you know, something I was happy that the movie did. I'm like, oh, like, you know, good job on you for like finding a new way to scare people. It was a cool setup, and again, probably not as like original as the other one, but still an effective jump scare, I thought.
Yeah, and then the plots kind of come together later on, because Dalton once again goes into the further unintentionally, I think, at this point, but it's basically the demon. Not the one that's been after his family, like the one that was after Josh, the one that was cross-dressing, the one that had the sort of Darth Maul looking face. Although notably, he looked more burned now, as if he'd been set on fire.
It's.
Did that happen in the second movie or the first movie?
No, this one I wasn't really sure like why he looked so different.
It's been a rough 10 years in the further, all right?
I guess. Yeah, but no, I mean, it's just kind of strange that. I mean, maybe my memory, even though I did rewatch it, maybe there was something about that was just off. Maybe like when you look at it closely, it's like, oh, it's actually not that different or whatever. But
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like that Darth Maul looking demon and the one that was targeting Josh, who looked like a woman, and then you found out in the second movie it was actually a man. They were separate entities, right? That wasn't the same thing, right? Okay, I thought that was right. I was just double checking.
Yeah, I could be wrong because I don't think they specifically say, like, I think I think they call it the lipstick demon, from the first movie. Like, I think it is like it's kind of become well known in the franchise because it is such like a striking design, and it is, a very like creepy, scary moment in the first movie. But I also feel like they never really fully explain exactly what it is or what its intentions are, especially like compared to like you're saying the I forget what they call it, as like the Bride in Black or something like that.
Yeah. Although to be fair, I think because they set up the idea that the bride he wanted Josh as a kid, and then once he started getting into the further again as an adult in the first movie, it immediately came after him again. Like they wanted them immediately.
Yeah,
it makes sense that this is the demon that kidnapped what's his name, Dalton in the first movie. He's the one that had him chained up in the further, and then obviously the first movie ended with Josh going and getting him with the lantern and all that, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense that if they do get attached to like a victim, that he would come after him again. That's the specific demon that would come for him. So I do appreciate that bit of continuity and mythology that they're kind of doing there.
Yeah, I could be maybe wrong about this, but I kind of feel like maybe that particular demon kind of just wants to like keep people prisoner, like in the further whatever, because they have them like chained up and like in the cage and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like maybe it wants like victims to kind of keep and torture versus someone like the bride who actually wants to inhabit a body. Like maybe they kind of have different MOs, but
it does inhabit his body in this one though.
Was it that the specific demon, or I
thought it was maybe because
I watched it a couple of you're probably right. I watched it a couple of days ago now, so my memory's not best.
So the whole thing is they coalesce because Dalton's sending the photos of the painting that he's doing to his brother, and he keeps adding more to it, and he eventually realizes he's added his father with a hammer, because basically one of the repressed memories they all have is that when his dad was possessed in the second movie, he tried to murder them all with a hammer. So that comes up. But because the brothers got these photos, and like Josh and the mum have seen them now, they're like, hey, wait a minute, he's in trouble, we have to do something. And one of the things that made the ending feel rushed to me is that all of a sudden Josh is just in the further, like he knows what he's doing. I'm like,
yeah,
come on, he needs to like remember how to do this. This has to be like a bigger deal that he's like going back in here to save him. But whatever, like it gets to that point and he goes in. But what I was getting to is that when he goes to get Declan or Dalton, sorry, out of the chains and stuff, the entity that's in his body that's attacking Chris leaves the body when he realizes that his prisoner's getting like freed, and the body just sort of drops to sleep, and then that demon shows up in the in the further after them. So I think it was definitely him. Maybe it's just the idea that like once they're old enough, he does want to possess whoever his victim is, so he can cause
make sense,
chaos and do stuff and whatever.
And maybe it is maybe it is like more important to him to also have them as like a prisoner, that because even if he escapes, like he can still be in his body, because like that's like what they were doing in the second movie, like the bride was running around in Josh's body and he was running around in the further. But I mean, maybe it is important though that he like can control them and have them as like a prisoner.
Or at the very least, maybe it's just
that's interesting though.
Maybe eventually, if they're running around, they'll figure out a way to like take their body back. Whereas if he keeps them chained up, it's like no, like you're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything.
There you go. Yeah.
But Josh gets them out, and they get to the door. But when they shut the door, the red door, the titular red door, like they're holding it shut, and like shit, we can't leave because this thing's going to get through if we leave it. And I genuinely thought Josh was going to sacrifice himself here. He basically chooses to. He says, "Leave me. I'll keep the door shut." And then he says, "This will end with me," which is him. That's him quoting his father, because he found out that his father sent his mother a note saying this ends with me before he committed suicide. So his father clearly tried to stop all this horror that was happening to him from spreading to his kid by committing suicide, right? Which is super tragic, but it feeds into the whole idea that if this whole thing, this like ability to go into the further and the astral projection, if that is an analogy for mental health, the idea that mental health took like someone, like that someone committed suicide because of their mental health, and now like, you know, the son and the grandson are having to tackle it in hopefully a healthier way, where they aren't repressing it, where they've figured it out. This is actually where I thought Lin Shaye might pop up, because we know that she is in the further, and I wouldn't have been that mad, because this would have fit with the established mythology that she's in here somewhere.
Yeah.
But instead they do it later for some reason in the real world, which I thought was weird, but, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of, like, again, I was expecting, you know, that the, you know, first half of the movie or so would be them, you know, figuring stuff out and getting answers and, you know, and remembering stuff, and then maybe not the first half, maybe, you know, the first 2/3 or whatever. And then I thought the final act was going to be like, okay, we got that stuff out of the way. Now we can do something big, and like we can really explore the further and have some like cool, creepy stuff, and have like a big, you know, epic showdown and stuff for them. But yeah, it feels like it's just kind of rushed and happens real fast. And then like, and like you're saying, another thing I thought was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to see Elise in the further, because yeah, you established in the second one that she's there. And I think she even says something in the second one along the lines of like I think the other old guy, I might be misremembering, but I thought there was something where it's like, oh, like, are you going to move on or whatever? And she's like, oh, like, I have people to help here or whatever. So yeah, it seems like that would be the kind of the place that you would see her, but no. And then yeah, and then the ending, or the whatever, how they solve the door, they just paint over it, like it's a little dull. Yeah,
Dalton paints over it in the real world, and like in the further it starts to get covered in like blood effectively, and it's like sealing the door shut, and eventually it just fades into the darkness. And I'm like, this is a little strange. Like, I guess maybe if you think about how everything started up again, it's because he painted it, and like you could argue that recreated the door, so maybe now he's erasing it. But I never even considered that possibility until this moment where he's painting over it, and I didn't really understand why he thought painting over it would get rid of it. Like, yeah, like, because nothing else he does to the painting, I think, really affects anything in the movie before this point. So it felt like a solution that wasn't properly set up. I think if they set this up with a couple of hints that, you know, he was influencing things with what he was drawing, that would be something. It probably works a little bit when you think of it as a metaphor, and like him, you know, like, I don't know, it probably works at least a little bit that way, but it doesn't work in the context of like the rules that the movies have set up with the mythology and the further and all that.
I mean, it seems kind of weird to me where it's like, if the point of the movie is that you're not supposed to, you know, repress your memories, like even the bad ones, like, you know, you should have to live with them or whatever. But then it's like, that to me sounds like it's like, yeah, you should, like, you know, you should let your, you know, open the door and let, you know, your memories out or whatever, where it seems like if you're painting over them, it seems like that's like another metaphor for kind of like, you know, not paying attention to it, or like trying to forget it or something.
He says it right after he does this, because Chris says you should burn that painting now, and he's like, no, we should remember it, even the, you know, all the memories, we should keep even the bad ones. I think this is a conflict where the literal thing that's happening in the movie is that this door is literally a door to demons that are going to come and kill them and everyone else. So they have to seal the door shut. That's kind of important, but it doesn't necessarily quite fit with all the messaging that's otherwise being said, which, you know, I think I would have been fine with this if they just set it up a little bit more throughout the movie. That this was, you know, if this felt like a eureka moment where I'm like, oh yeah, this makes sense because of this thing earlier, I would have probably quite liked it. But as it was a little bit out of nowhere. It was just, like, you know, it was just a complete out of left field thing.
Like, you probably could have had like some scene with the art teacher or something where, like, you know, she's saying something that, like, you know, oh, about how your art can affect things, and you can, you know, like, even like some little line like that you could be like, oh, okay, I see where he might get that idea from or whatever. But yeah, something like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously his dad saved him. At the start of the movie,
Josh commented how he's drawn every member of the family and put them on his wall except him. And then at the end of the movie, he draws basically the end of the first movie, which is Josh carrying him as a boy through the further, holding the lantern. And Josh gets out of the further because his dad shows up. His dead dad shows up and hands him a lantern, which will let him get back to the real world. I thought he had to go back to his body, which maybe they're just implying that he does go back to his body. But he just picks up the lantern and then it cuts to the real world. And part of me thought he was going to die because I kind of felt like Patrick Wilson, because he's like directing this, I thought he might be like giving himself like, I'm going to give myself an emotional death scene. And that's kind of what he got when he was yelling, go, I'll stay behind, don't worry about me, as he's holding the door. He's
Oscar time, baby.
Yeah, that's kind of like, not that he thinks he's seriously going to get the nominations, but in a way he's like, I feel like he's giving himself like, I'm going to give myself some good material. I'm going to be able to act. I'm an actor and I shall act in Insidious 5. But he wakes up and it seems like the marriage is maybe a little mended. She invites him to dinner. Doesn't go to, it's not like he's moving in already, but it's like, oh, maybe this is the start of a mend of the whole thing.
I mean, I don't know how long they've been divorced, but I mean, come on, it's like there weren't guys lined up around the block like ready to ask out Rose Byrne, like just happens to still be single.
She never felt single because she was still connected to her family and her ex-husband. You know, it was like you say, it was like the reasons for divorce were kind of weird because she knew it was because of the thing that they had to do to him.
There was an interesting idea there, which I wish they kind of would have explored more, where she says, you know, like, oh, like, yeah, you were chasing our children around or whatever. And it's like, well, that wasn't me. It's like, yeah, but the kids don't know that. Like, it looked like you. Like, it's hard to separate that. And I thought that was like a really interesting idea because you don't really see that explored in a lot of horror movies. Like, there's so many times where, you know, people are possessed and they're, going after someone and then they get cured and then at the end everyone's a happy family again. But yeah, like psychologically, like how does that affect someone when you're looking at the face of? I
think that's partly why the way everyone is at the start of the movie doesn't feel cheap to me, is because it does kind of make sense that if they have any kind of recollection of that, even if it's just fleeting, it would mess them all up. Like the idea that they live through this and like, yeah, they would be kind of weirded out by it. So
the other thing, I don't know if you agree though, like when they kind of have the revelation when they, he has that painting of the dad chasing after them or whatever, like I didn't think it really looked like Patrick Wilson. I don't know if it was just me, like
I'll be honest, it wasn't until they said it out loud that I got that that's who it was.
Like maybe it was enough that like it triggered the memory in them, I guess, but
basically what you're saying is his art's not as good as he thinks it is.
I mean, I think he's a very good artist. It's just that in that case it wasn't what you were going for.
Yeah, it looked good, but it wasn't capturing the likeness of Patrick Wilson maybe as much. And we were critiquing Dalton. Obviously they had some artists do this for the movie. It wasn't him. I mean, who knows, maybe Dalton is maybe the actor is a talented artist. Maybe this was a match made in heaven for him.
Triple threat. Good actor, good artist, good astral projector.
I was going to say what's the third. I was lost on why it was a triple, but fair enough. And then the final scene of the movie is Lynn Shay showing up to talk to Josh as he's leaving the house, and he's getting into his car and she starts talking to him, and I thought, okay, I know that voice, I know that's her. And he kind of says, oh, you seem familiar. And she never says, because obviously he still doesn't remember everything, right? He doesn't remember her from the first two movies. And I don't even remember what she says. She just says something sort of hopeful about, keep on fighting and something.
Yeah, I mean, again, we love Lynn Shay. I love this character. Like, it's, a different type of like horror character we see, and so it's cool that she's such a staple of the franchise to the point where she's like pretty big character in some of these movies even after she's passed on. But you mentioned earlier, like this scene is just so saccharine, like it feels like it's just so like ugh.
This is I think Insidious, because of its premise, can get away with some the scene where the dad meets Josh, right? And it's Josh meeting his father that he's never met before. That's arguably a little saccharine too, but I think it gets away with that for me because that feels like everything's functioning in the rules that the movies have set up to this point. It makes sense that he can be in here because not only is this a place where ghosts are, this is a place where he was also visiting when he was alive. So much like Lin Shaye came here before and now she's stuck around, it makes sense that he could be in here trying to help people, particularly his sons. I mean, admittedly, it does make you think, why didn't he try and help in the first couple of movies at all? But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But I think that the work, and that's why I say, like, I think the video of Lin Shaye earlier on in YouTube was enough, to be honest. But if she was going to show up again, I would have thought, oh, it'll be in the further. It'll be there, and it would make complete sense, and it wouldn't feel too saccharine because she's actually actively helping. But here, it's like not only does she show up in the real world to talk to him, she also just shows up to give him a little message after everything's over, and it doesn't feel like she says anything important. So it just kind of feels like fluff that isn't needed. So, yeah, I mean, I think these are all fair critiques. I think the last like 20-25 minutes have some rushed. I still like some of it. I like conceptually what it's mostly doing, but I do think it is rushed. I do think it could have developed and made more of a moment out of like the fight to save Dalton and stuff like that, and just maybe make it more of a big deal and a challenge for Josh to actually do this again, because he doesn't remember doing it. He's been told all this stuff. He's been told this creepy ghost was looking at him when he was a kid, but he doesn't remember any of it. He's,
dare I say, a little bit of a Mary Sue.
But it's the kind of thing where, like, arguably it would really ruin the pacing if we have to then go on a whole pivot where we have to sit him down and train him for 20 minutes before we can get to the rescue and all that. But, you know, that's something the script maybe should have, like, sorted out and tried to be inventive with in a different way. But I do like the whole idea, though, of, like, them realizing Dalton's in trouble in the further in a different city, and then him going into the further to help. It's a little bit Stranger Things season 4 with the upside down in a way.
Yeah.
But although it does raise the question, did Josh walk all the way from where they were to where Dalton is in the further?
Very good question.
Then again, he doesn't go to the location in the campus. He just goes to where the red door is. Arguably, the red door in that demon dimension can be accessed from any part of the further because it's like ethereal. It's separate from the map of reality or something.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being generous there. I don't. But either way, it's. But despite all these complaints, I still thought it was a decent watch, and I still liked enough of the scares for the most part. I thought I was invested in Dalton remembering what happened to him, and his relationship with his father was. Well, it was drawn out a little bit at points early on. I still kind of found myself wanting them to like get to the point where they both remembered everything, and the idea of it filling in for like passing down a mental illness that took their grandfather's life, I think it works on that level as well for the most part. Like, none of it's perfect. There's definitely flaws, and it's not a great movie, but it's par 5 in a long running franchise. I was kind of happy enough with it, to be honest. Like, I got enough out of it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I liked it. You know, it's again, sometimes you kind of have to over explain like your position, because sometimes if you say something is just fine or okay, people think that means that you hated it, and it's like, no, like, yeah, like definitely didn't hate it at all. Like, it was I'd say a good movie, just not, you know, it doesn't just go the extra step beyond. Like, it's not great, it's not amazing, it's not, you know, the best entry in the franchise, but it doesn't mean it was bad. You know, it's perfectly watchable. Yeah, but I would say probably, you know, I don't know if, like, like, I don't think I really had much expectations either way going in, because I didn't really pay attention to reviews or whatever when it came out. So I assumed it probably wasn't amazing, because, you know, if it was amazing, you probably would have heard about it. But I assume that also meant it wasn't like horrible, because I didn't hear about that either. So
very true.
But yeah, you know, so I was expecting probably something down the middle. I'd say it was definitely you know, a bit better than that, but yeah, it just, like, you know, doesn't really exceed maybe in all cases, but doesn't mean that, you know, it's a bad watch or anything by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. I think I would describe myself as pleasantly but mildly surprised.
There you go. Yeah.
That's how I'd kind of sum it up. I think it's like it's not this new big home run that's revitalized the franchise, but it feels like a decent enough fifth entry that, you know, might be the last one. I don't know how well this did, but it feels like, yeah, if you ended it here, this would be a fine ending. Like, them getting over this trauma would work as an ending. But at the same time, you could easily do another one like 3, where you just do a separate story that connects to the further, and just do that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think like you you mentioned it before, like, where if you're doing a marathon, that, you know, you would definitely want to include this movie. So, you know, it's probably not like going to be the type of movie where it's like, oh, you know, every October I watch, you know, this movie for Halloween. But, you know, after a couple of years, when it's been a while since you've seen it, it might be like, oh, you know what might be fun is, you know, watching a couple of Insidious movies, and, you know, it can fit, you know, right in there. But
it kind of forms a trilogy with the first two, but
yeah,
I think 3 is the best sequel, so I would say that you should watch 3 as well. The only one that I'd say skip is 4.
Yeah.
But hey, all right. Well, I guess it's time to rate the movie, Tim. So, what are you rating Insidious: The Red Door?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I did have a fun time watching it. I think there was a couple of standout, you know, set pieces that, you know, were really nice. I was, you know, surprised at, how much I enjoyed revisiting these characters, which was something that's probably the biggest surprise for me. Like, you know, you give me any, you know, new Insidious movie, and I'm, yeah, happy to watch it. But yeah, when you tell me like, oh, we're going back to these characters, I'm not against it, but I was like, oh, am I gonna care that much?
I think
surprisingly,
something you said earlier is that from the trailer, I thought they were going to do the thing where, oh, I'm going to just be annoyed that they've made them all miserable. But like you said earlier, like, everything, like, the misery kind of made sense in the context of like what they set up before, and then the movie was about getting over that in a way that felt natural to me. So
yeah, totally. And like, yeah, it's annoying when you like having a character that's just like this angsty, mopey teen that's just like, you know, shut up, dad. Like, you know, if there wasn't the context of the reason that they're going through it, I'd be like, oh wow, Dalton grew up to be like an annoying little shit. But because of the context of the movie, you're actually invested with, oh, like, I'm interested that in, yeah, this rift between them, and how they're gonna, you know, get over it. So that's yeah, that was all very interesting.
To be fair as well, I think that once he's interacting with Chris, that I think his dynamic completely changes. Like, as soon as he's away from his dad, and he's not, because he's not being mopey, he's just kind of being awkward and trying to make friends now. It is a very different side to him, and I think that kind of opens it up a bit.
Oh, I agree too. Yeah. Even though I didn't necessarily love her character, I do agree with what you said, that they did have like good chemistry. Like I liked it, you know, best when they were kind of bouncing off each other. But yeah, so that being said, I was kind of waffling between a 6.5 and a 7. I did have fun talking about it, so maybe I'll be a little generous and give it the bump to the 7. So that's pretty good territory. But yeah, I'll go with that.
I was not expecting that score, Tim, to be honest, because I'm giving it a 6, and I felt like, if anything, I was slightly more positive than you, and then you've hit me with a 7 here. So I'm not sure how to read that, but I think it's over the line. I think it's into enjoyable territory if you like the franchise and you like the characters and all that stuff. But it's not a great movie. It is definitely a sequel that's sort of like further down the road in sequels, and does rush a few things, but it's got a few effective scares, and yeah, I'm not mad I watched it, and I would probably happily watch it again as part of an Insidious franchise watch, without much fuss. So
I think the good news is that our scores average to a 6.5, which is probably what it actually is, so I'll give it that.
Yeah, well, there you go. That is Insidious: The Red Door. You can let us know what you think of the movie in the comments, and so on and so on. But hopefully you're enjoying the Octoberthon, everyone, and all these extra episodes, which I am totally not sick of editing. by this point in the month. Oh, once you've written like 15 of those intros that I do for the voiceover, I've got nothing left to say. Oh.
Well, if you want me to take a stab at it.
Oh god. Oh dear. Have you even listened to any of them to know what they sound like?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think you have.
I have. Calm down.
All right. But yeah, you can of course support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. The bonus episode was back this month. In fact, you're getting 2 for October. And it'll be back monthly going forward, and even more streams will be back in December. A Christmas treat, if you will. But yes, so look forward to that. But go get some bonuses if you want to support the show over on Patreon. But that is us, and we will see you for, I think, another subspecies next. So look forward to that as well.
It's a gift that never stops giving.
Yeah, we'll go with that, Tim. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies, and once more, into the further.